that again. First thing, I asked Sally to join. I was hoping that she could join because they, and by they I mean the JavaScript initiative lead team, or however these things are called, they do weekly meetings as well, but they do it differently. And I would like to see how that's working for them, and if we want to move from a video call to something more text-based, if that works for other people to be working at the same time as they join the meeting, or I know that Matt Davis, you're also involved with that pretty intimately. So, impressions of that?
I really like it, but I am biased, so maybe I can't really answer that.
It's okay. I mean, you only have your opinion, right? It's going to be biased.
Yeah. I find it more accessible because often, I don't know, there's lots of stuff going on during the day. It's really low overhead to join, and I like that I can catch up with things in my own time. So there's always I think there's more there's a greater ability to join in the conversation even if you can't be there for real time. Like you can be near real time.
And sorry, I missed just one bit. What is the tool that you use in the JavaScript meeting?
We do meetings in Slack, and they're threaded meetings. I can. Well, actually, if you join the JavaScript channel and scroll up on Drupal Slack.
Yeah, sorry, I failed to describe that. I assume that everyone was already knew that. So what I like is that they have kind of an agenda. They post like 3 or 4 main topics, and they go like sequentially. Like they first discuss number 1, and they do a lot of discussions in there. They give some breathing room for people to go back and forth, do some things at the same time, and then after a couple of minutes, they say, okay, let's move on to another topic. So the discussion is still organized because it's still sequential, but people can contribute to those. And things are not considered locked, but people tend to just move on to the next thing. And at the end, they do an export because Drupal Slack doesn't give you the full archive. Did I describe it correctly?
Yes, I just put a link in the chat. It'll take you straight to the last meeting we had in Drupal Slack, and then it's a bit manual, but then I copy and paste the meeting and we tweet it afterwards so people can read all the minutes.
So yeah, to be honest, I'm not saying that we should adopt it. I think that the video call works for us, but maybe we should just play with the idea, because I found myself going the day after to every JavaScript meeting and reading through it, but whenever I missed an API first call, I never went and watched the day before, because I can read while I'm waiting for people to join a meeting or.
Right. So the JavaScript meetings are entirely textual, or is it also a call?
They are entirely text.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how all of the meetings used to happen, as far as I know. I'm sure that Moshe knows more about the entire history of Drupal, but they used to be in IRC, and they used to be entirely text-based. Yeah, there's downsides and advantages to either one, right? Some people have a hard time expressing themselves in typing at the speed that things happen in Drupal Slack or in IRC sometimes, and then this is better, but it can also be the other way around. Yeah.
Maybe we could alternate them. It's really nice seeing people as well. The social aspect shouldn't be discounted.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do agree with one. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. How does it sound like having both at the same time? Try to make, Sally said, mixing them both. And example, before. Okay, so Okay, my bad. Before like going to the meeting, like putting some points in there and then discussing them the day before or the weekend or the week before, or I don't know, and then on the API meeting, on the meeting we just discuss like those points and then try to break them more and then clarify them and stuff like that. I don't know, just throwing ideas in the air.
I'm having a little bit of a trouble following you. It seems the audio is not great, but I think that what you said is that we could do a hybrid of the two and present an agenda and allow some discussion there, and then get more in depth in a call. I like that. I like that idea. Maybe we should talk into what tool to use for that, etc. I just wanted to say that we started doing this for the JSON API contrib. This kind of evolved into a more generic thing, and we just kept the format because it was familiar. But we can change it if enough people feel that it would be beneficial. Just wanted to bring it up because of that. All right. So many things happened during this week and the past weeks. One is that Wim turned the JSON API queue upside down. He went through and visited everything, and that's great. And I'm very happy to see where that leads. But the thing that excites me the most, sorry, Wim, is that Carlos landed an awesome patch for a simple auth, which is the ability to generate signature keys automatically. So if you have the PHP extension, the SSL extension for PHP, and if your user can write to a selected destination, it just there's a pop-up that lets you put the directory where you want those keys to be stored, and with a click those are generated, and you can choose to use them if you like so.
Is it similar to the hacky crap I did for Reservoir and that you kind of used in Contenta, and like the 2.0 version of that? It sounds like it is that.
It's I would say that it's an evolution of that. Certainly.
What I did was terrible, but it just was barely working, and it was making things easier. So I'm glad to hear that that's being solved properly.
And that went into the contrib module. There is a service that you can use for that to replace the things that are in the Reservoir install hook. And the good thing for Reservoir is that we already did this for Contenta, so it's clean copy and paste.
Awesome.
So yeah, that was very exciting to commit to that. And with that and something else that I committed for Contenta, I think that we are very, very close to doing a tagged release or a special tag for it. It's not like we're going to support upgrade paths or anything. It's still, we consider the distribution to be a good starting point, fork and go. But it's going to be a way to say, hey, at this point in time, things were nice and clean, and they were stable, and it was a feature set that we felt great about. The last thing is to upgrade to 8.4, because 8.3 is not supported, and we need to do that, which is also the way which Carlos also leading. So major props to Carlos. And yeah, committed a bunch of issues in JSON API, but nothing really major. I didn't have much time to get into some of the issues that Jin Cheng's team has been committing. Finally, I made a contrib which I think it's going to be useful, which is called decoupled router, and that will simplify routing in the coupled scenarios, because it's very hard to do routing that supports redirects. So when URL alias keeps changing in time, it's hard for let's say a React app to have a route that matches. And because right now we are searching with the URL alias, right? So nothing matches anymore. And that was a link that was linked from another website or shared in social media, but that URL alias is not current anymore. So that contrib will simplify things. And I'm working on an article to explain in depth how I see that being used and why it's so problematic to use routes. So yeah, that was my update. But I know that many things happened in core REST land. So Wim, please have a go.
Yeah, lots of long-time blockers got committed in the last 3 weeks. I haven't been here for the last 2 weeks at least. So shortly before that, so after the last time I was here, lots of things got committed as well. And those unblocked severe issues in core REST, but also JSON API. So really fundamental things. So for example, certain gaps in the data that is provided by the core REST module, but also JSON API, things such as processed text, image style URLs, and a bunch of others. And those now finally have the necessary infrastructure. So those issues, I think there's 4 or 5 of them, I forget how many exactly, those are all able to move forward. And that will help JSON API directly as well. Another thing that has happened is that we landed a test that tests the test coverage. So it's verifying that for every entity type, we do have full REST test coverage. So in other words, for the first time, we are certain that we aren't adding new entity types without them also having API first support. As in you are able to read them, create them, and so on via REST, which also means that the same will be true for JSON API. So that's quite important because that means that Drupal is kind of finally actually API first, in the sense that you have to have the API right from the very start. You have to be able to create and edit and read entities via REST and JSON API. There is only one straggler, one thing that one entity type that isn't yet covered by test coverage, which is the file entity type. Everything else does have REST test coverage. So that's the one exception we made because that one is taking a long time. But that one is very close as well. It's RTBC. And that brings us perhaps to another one that is also a long time blocker. The fact that you can't currently create files via REST or via JSON API. And that issue was blocked on like a whole bunch of them that are something like 4 or 5 issues, and 3 of them are now in. One is now still blocking it. Another one is kind of blocking it. So it's getting very close to being committable as well. And then there is a whole bunch of other stuff that is moving forward in core REST land. One other important thing that landed, only important for some users, but very important for those who do rely on it, XML support. So core REST does in fact support reading entities via XML. It doesn't really support creating or patching, posting or patching via XML, but at least now we will know if we regress in terms of XML reading. So if you get entities in XML format, now it's guaranteed that that is not going to be broken in some minor version of Drupal core, because now we have test coverage proving that it's not being changed. I think those are the highlights, and a whole bunch of things are in progress. Lots of things are finally unblocked, and so things are finally aligning to a point where core REST is getting truly mature, and JSON API is getting less of a need to work around certain gaps. And so that's a very good place to be in. So more of that to follow. Hope that made sense.
I think it did, yes. I have to admit that the one that excites me the most is the files one. I just that one should land.
Yes,
the better. Yes.
And that one might break the record of the number of comments on an issue on Drupal.org. It's like at more than 350 at the moment. Probably it's going to get beyond 400. So.
Yeah. Well, there's always a pleasure when that gets committed. Awesome. Thank you. I want to open the floor, and now we have like a small Scrum update, and let's see if you have any suggestions, comments, or. I don't think we can hear you, Qingsheng.
Still not, unfortunately.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I switched to typing.
Okay, yeah, sure. Anyways.
Yeah, I do want to call out Jing Sheng and his teammates, I think, or maybe Jin Sheng is a manager, I'm not sure. In any case, colleagues of him are working a lot on JSON API and core REST normalization issues, specifically related to commerce. I'm sorry, I apologize in the issue as well, Jing Sheng, for not being able to review faster, but those issues are moving forward really well now. So that's exciting to see those things get fixed as well. So good job there. I think we might be able to hear you now, actually. I heard you typing, but I can't hear you talk.
Yeah, it's weird. It seems like some audio is getting through.
How about now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. I was looking to implement OAuth, simple OAuth-based SSO for Drupal sites as well as for third parties. So one question I have is, does the current simple OAuth support private claims? Meaning, if it's possible for other modules to extend the JWT and add private or extra information.
Yes, and that's actually surprisingly easy because it's just creating a normalizer, and you're done. Like you will need to find out what the format is. I don't remember what the string is, but once you know that, you can overwrite that in your custom project and add as much information as you need in there. Because I know that's useful for if you want to, have distributed authorization systems, and that's how people have been using it.
Okay, great. That's good news. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that this deserves a little bit more explanation. So, simple auth, the auth2 module, transmits tokens that are JWTs, but they are also persisted, and they are persisted in the database because the PHP library that we're using does things like expiring tokens based on server rules, etc. And we need something to store that. And but those JWTs that get transmitted, they could be decrypted by a Node app or whatever. So you could save yourself a trip to Drupal. So you could push your keys to Node app and decrypt the token there and say, okay, if I see this, then it means that it was created by Drupal and it's valid, and and it's it's the same as authorizing in Drupal. So what the question was like, can I add more stuff to this encrypted token, which in the end is just a JSON document? And yeah, the answer is yes, with a normalizer.
I actually have a following question. I asked you a few minutes ago on RSC. So if you have a persistent storage for the token on the authorization server, how would you if the revoking happens, how would you revoke the access token on the resources server?
Yeah, well, that is kind of custom implementation at the moment. I mean, you would need to check if the token is revoked or not, or just for your particular use case, leverage the constraints that, because we work in a very generic system, but every project will have constraints, and maybe you can say, I don't care, my system is not going to revoke tokens.
Okay, that would make sense to me.
But yeah, otherwise you would need to ping Drupal, and that would defeat the purpose anyways.
Right.
I have another call, so I have to run. But before I do, I just wanted to say people here might be interested in the discussions we've been having about JSON schema for Form API. So if you're interested in that, come to the Pound JavaScript channel, because we're having our meeting later today. And with that, I have to go. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Nice. Well, I think that Daniel or Matt, do you know if there is a way to provide feedback without, because I never can attend these meetings in the JavaScript channel because of all the conflicts. Can I do it after, before? How would that work?
Well, I guess the best way would be to read the discussions which happened in the JavaScript channel and then like comment in there. The way how Matt and Sally set up the meeting is that for each discussion point there is like a Slack thread. So like I guess you could just comment on each individual Slack thread.
Okay, so they are not considered locked after the meeting ends, right?
No, I don't think so. Well, maybe Matt has a different opinion, but there will also, or there are also issues created out of those. So there is also discussion going on there.
Cool.
And yeah, and a group Drupal post.
That's great. I think that's a very good point of contact between the two initiatives. The JSON schemas for entities, at least.
This is, I think, the issue for JSON schemas and Form API for those interested.
Great. I can stay a little bit longer, so if anyone else has stuff to discuss, I'm happy to stay. And I also can just get back to life. All right. Awesome, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.